who's going to chair this session. 2 fun facts about Scott. First of all, the last time he was in Athens, it was for his honeymoon, which I just think is lovely. The second one is that he, and I've never ever said this before or heard this, he's very proud of his dictionary collection. So apparently he's got more dictionaries than he can count. But this time, Scott is going to be talking blockchain, and I'm going to let him introduce you to the panel. So Scott, please come on out. And I believe Vivian and Mirko. Thank you so much.
We have to follow where the name tags are. So, hi, I'm Scott Yates. Thank you very much for joining us on this for an exciting blockchain session. We are also live streaming this, and so we wanted to encourage people to submit questions over live stream. And I tweeted earlier that we'd be very interested if anybody is interested in really problem solving. So we want to hear a presentation from Vivian, and then we want to hear from Mirko. But then we want to really talk to you and make it a real dialogue. So please help us participate with this. I'm not going to do a long introduction of either of the speakers. You can see the bios on all of them up on the screen. But I will say that I've become a big fan of Vivian for her remarkable career. She's done amazing work at CNN and Twitter and National Public Radio. But I've also become a fan of her son, who works at Google, and I was at a workshop at the TED headquarters where he was also, and he was just a terrific young man, obviously very bright and also very humble, which, say what you will, there's not a lot of humility going around.
Give him time.
At Google. Yeah,
he's only
yeah,
23.
Yeah. And then Mirko is also joining us from the sort of what I think of as the special strike team within Deutsche Welle, doing new projects, and he's got a lot of interesting things to talk about as well. So in order to try to stay on time, we'll start with Vivian with a presentation, and she's a former radio person, so we know she's going to be able to hit her time mark. So we'll do 5 minutes on Civil.
Yeah, I'm not even. I don't even want to call it a presentation. I really just want to sort of do a quick explainer of what Civil is, because when you tell people what happens, and I'm sure you have the same experience, use the word blockchain, and people's sort of eyes either glaze over or they just are like, they shut down because they think, I don't understand it, I can't understand it. So I'm going to try to, at least with regard to Civil, I'm not going to explain blockchain technology, I just want to explain what we're up to, because it's all about journalism. So I don't know how, oh, okay. So just, this is going to be super quick. So I don't need to explain this slide. Everybody in this room understands perfectly well the crisis in journalism, which is really the crisis of the information needs of societies around the world, for a whole bunch of reasons, including that all intersect public trust, failing press freedom, business models, platforms, yes, including Google, controlling data and distribution. So we sort of started with, you always ask for, when you're starting a business, and we are a small startup, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And the problem that we're trying to solve is rather a large one, which is the entirety of the news ecosystem. Yes, we know that's very ambitious, but you want to start with your audacious goal and then get at it, one piece at a time. It's like my favorite new expression I heard somebody speak is, you don't eat the elephant in one bite. So what is Civil? What we're trying to do is we're creating, or we have created actually, it's a community-owned platform that is governed only by journalists and the public they are committed to serve. So what do we mean when, let me just say, what does that mean? That means there's no owner, there's no tech company, there's no algorithm, there's no billionaire, there's no hedge fund, there's nothing. There are just the journalists and the public. And the reason we've built this platform on blockchain is because blockchain technology uniquely allows this kind of self-governance to happen. That's the only reason. It is a means to an end. So this, at Civil, the very core and the very heart of Civil is something called the Civil Constitution. It is for any journalist in the room. You will read it and it'll look like very standard, very typical standards and practices and ethics, but it's important for us when you have self-governance to have a guiding document or sort of a Bible of what it means to be on the Civil platform. So we have the Civil Constitution, and then news organizations that come on. There are 3 elements to Civil. There is the registry. A registry is basically just a list. These are a list of the newsrooms that have signed on to Civil, who agree to abide by the Constitution. There are civil tokens. Yes, this is a cryptocurrency, another one of those words that freaks people out, but it's really just a voting mechanism so that members of the community have the ability to govern the community. And then civil membership, these are the people that buy tokens, they become civil members, and they help govern. So we've got a whole bunch of newsrooms who have signed on. Here's just 6 of, right now I think we're close to 60 newsrooms on the registry. When a newsroom signs on, there's a 2-week waiting period when the community reviews them. If after 2 weeks there's no issues, they come onto the registry or the list. Some newsrooms have been challenged and ejected based on the Constitution. In these cases, for a bunch of different reasons, but they were all publishers who really, they didn't have any editorial standards. They were publishing press releases. There was some pay-to-play going on, so they were ejected. So the governance, and then when a newsroom is ejected, they can actually appeal it if they like to something called the Civil Council. So in case there's a problem, the Civil Council, which as you can see is, with the exception of me, they're all very well-respected, very smart people in the industry. There have been 2 appeals, and they have, and we have adjudicated and published those findings. The amazing thing about this system, it sounds, before we launched, I mean, to me, I was worried, it sounds very heavy, but it's actually working beautifully. And the community, it's all working. Like, the good news organizations are getting on, and the bad ones are, excuse me, not bad ones, but ones that are not practicing journalism go off. So it's really, really exciting. We have a bunch of newsrooms, including some who are here. Coda Story we're proud, who Natalia was up here, is a civil newsroom. But it's really, and I know we'll get into this more in the discussions, it's really not just about creating this list. It's about then what can you do with it. And I know we're going to speak in a few minutes because both my colleague and at Civil, we're looking at issues of permanence. We're looking at issues of identity, smart contracts, syndications, ways for journalists and for news organizations to own their identity, own their content, and for the public to own their data. So I will stop there, except to say that, hi, I'm here, and my colleague Ursula, where are you, Ursula? Are you somewhere in the room? She's
right here in the middle.
Somewhere, she's right there in the middle. We'll be around, we'll be happy to talk to you. And the last thing I'm just gonna say is, you all are gonna get an email tomorrow morning because, and the email is gonna come from Jen, and with it, you are going to be able to get your own, for free, we're providing it, your own cryptocurrency, and you're gonna be able to make your very first, or if you're not new to blockchain or whatever, your first transaction using a cryptocurrency tomorrow, and you're gonna be able to donate it to one of 5 incredible organizations that are supporting journalism. So look for that email, and then find me or Ursula, and we'll help you out if you have any issues.
Thank you very much. That was terrific, and I think you were very good on time. I have to say I'm happy Colorado Sun reader and supporter. I have the T-shirt and everything. That's one of the newsrooms that's in the Civil network. And I think Civil is an amazing story. I'm a startup mentor for Techstars and some of the other groups, and I mentor lots of different startups, and I have to tell you, a lot of them, probably everybody in the room is familiar, you went through, really almost an existential crisis when you started out, and very few companies have the resilience to come back from that. And so if we want to talk about, if anybody wants to talk about some of the things that went into that, we can talk about that maybe in a little bit, but it's a very impressive story. But before we do that, let's hear from Mirko, who has an amazing story himself, which he shared with me. We walked over here together, and he told me that he actually has done something that very few Americans have done, which is he's driven from coast to coast, both directions. He drove from the East Coast all the way to California. What was it? You said you had the wheels touch the actual Pacific Ocean and then drive all the way back. And what kind of car was it?
Ford Torino station wagon from '74.
Yeah. So this is a very brave man in front of you, not just because he's here at this beautiful opera house. So please, Mirko.
Yeah, thank you very much. I cut myself equally short just to provide some context. So Blomen is driven by funding from the EU, where EU research project for 3 years. We are about half with some partners from Essence Technology Center as well. So what we're trying to figure out is very simple. Imagine your organization would have to deploy a blockchain to get anything done tomorrow. Of course, there would be a lot of questions, like what is the real benefit? What do we do with it? Why should we use it? So everybody has heard the quite catchy buzzword, but it's kind of hard to pin down what you can do with it. And in Bloman, it's relatively simple. We are trying to manage media assets, such as music, video, and photos by using blockchain. And it's an experimental character, but we're trying, currently I can show you a demonstrator. I'm heading the photo use case. And it was relatively simple. I walked out to our photo editors and I said, where do we need better photos? And they said, from Africa. We don't have photos from Africa, even from the big wires. We, of course, use all the big wires. And it's not that those are bad or whatever, but pictures, recent pictures of African politicians, ruling party and opposition party, plus the others, hard to come by, from an African perspective. And there's another aspect which is important to us as an industry. How do we pay such creatives? I call them creatives because it can be writers, can be photographers, whatever. We expect them to go studying for years, then deliver something for us on time, deadline, whatever, and then we don't really care about their livelihood. So I understand that you're looking at newsrooms, and I would like to contribute, or our project would like to contribute, what do we do about making contracts, acquiring content, and paying for it in a fair way? Like a fair trade for media content. We see, you know, photo is worth nothing in some views, and it's worth the world when it's in a news organization. And we believe that blockchain can help with that, but we're trying to put you know, the pedal to the metal by really trying it out. By the end of the year, I would like to be able to buy a first photo. And currently, we're reaching out to African photographers in order to find out better what is bugging them. How is it to work with Western media? How long do we take to pay? Can we use smart contracts to secure a fair way of exchanging it? So and that's basically it. So what we do is, and that is my message, and it's my last chart already, we're trying to figure out how it actually in our world, in our issues, our things that we would like to manage better, easier, faster, because that's what it is about. I'm not keen on another technology, but if it helps us with that, I'm not so sure at this moment to go into the discussion. I see that, for example, Facebook is considering using blockchain for payment, which would be a change, and the technology would have to grow up very, very quickly, and then because there are a lot of issues in blockchain that are problematic. So that's it from me.
Thank you very much. There are a lot of issues that are problematic, and I don't know if either of you want to speak to it. I know neither of you are blockchain experts, but you know, one of the issues I think that gets glossed over kind of quickly is the environmental impact. That there is this huge issue, the way that we create the mined currency is by having computers do the work. And if the computers are doing the work, that means they're consuming energy. And so, you know, we've heard the stories about people that are putting computers in the back of their electric car and going to Whole Foods and plugging the car in and sucking the free energy from Whole Foods just to be able to power the computer to mine their coins. I know that neither of you are involved in the Bitcoin part, which is good. But I wonder, what are some of the unexpected things like that? Like nobody, when they started out making Bitcoin, nobody expected that there would be people sucking energy out of Whole Foods parking lots to be able to make Bitcoin. What are some of the unexpected things that you guys have faced in trying to deal with a new way of doing commerce and transactions and following a constitution and that sort of thing?
I mean, the biggest challenge we've faced is, well, it's twofold. One is consumer education. Understandably, this is new. I mean, this is, imagine talking about the internet, you know, in, God knows, you know, in the late 70s or early 80s. People don't understand it. You know, it's a series of tubes, as the late Senator Ted once said. So it's really, it's hard for people to understand, and it's a little bit scary, you know, and there have been some, you know, some stories of people, you know, there's things like, for instance, you have to download a wallet, a digital wallet, in order to hold your cryptocurrency, which are, you know, again, a cryptocurrency, a coin, it's just a piece of software. So those pieces of software represent your ownership. You keep them in a virtual wallet. But there's all kinds of sort of, to me, kind of nutty things like you have to, if you lose your password to that, there is absolutely no way on earth that you can get it back. You cannot retrieve it. So if you have $1 million worth of like Bitcoin, by the way, we're not based on Bitcoin, we're based on Ethereum, which is a different cryptocurrency technology. But, so there's been sort of famous stories of people losing their money because somebody's died with their, and they don't know the password, and, so all of those kinds of things. But what I've seen, even in the 1 year that I've been involved, is all of this with consumer adoption, the vendors are more incented to create simpler, more easy-to-use technology. So you're already seeing improvements in digital wallets. So I think a lot of the issues that are obstacles right now for people to buy cryptocurrency or use it for something, even for something for good. We don't do currency speculation. We're just trying to support newsrooms. We tell anybody, don't buy civil tokens if you want to get rich. You won't. Use them to support journalism. But these are some consumer obstacles that are a problem.
Mirko, I'd like to hear some problems that you've solved. And I'm going to pull out my phone and look, and it's not because I'm bored with the session, but because we were encouraging people to tweet in questions. So I'm going to see if there's any questions. And if you have questions, start to get them ready, because you're here, so you get priority because you're in the audience. But Mirko, if you want to talk about maybe some problems that you didn't expect, that you had to deal with as they came up when you're working on this, or even one of the other projects that involve blockchain.
I chime in to an extent. Like you heard the buzzword, then you're trying to deploy it, and every little step is kind of problematic. For example, certain of these currencies are not scaling if you really want to have a lot of transactions per second. That is an issue. Maybe on the positive side, in Europe, Spain has created something of a national blockchain consortium consisting of the banks, telecoms, and so on. It's called Alastria, which we are using in Blomen. And I find that interesting, that the whole government and the big companies are getting together to trying to understand the technology. And from our media side, I think we should not go into technology as half-baked as we are usually doing it. Yeah, we hear the buzzword, we write a lot of articles, we think it's for us maybe, and then all of a sudden we are circumvented by big platforms that figured it out much deeper. And why are we not more stressing the points about a social concept of it? Like, you cannot roll out a new currency when you don't consider how to get everybody involved paid at the end of the day. Of course, there are phases where you experiment. That, I think, should be stressed more. I think you find easier an audience for that maybe in Europe, maybe, not sure. But that's what I like about these efforts to put newsrooms on new footing. Well, it's difficult. Of course, it's super difficult. But, can we use these technologies to be fiercely on the user side? And currently they are not. They're behaving like that. But fiercely on the user side, they are not.
I just want to amplify that. When you talk about, fiercely on the user side, this is about protecting the consumer. Right now, all of us are giving away our data right now because we're all operating on with these large platforms. And that data, as you know, everybody in this room understands is gold. The opportunity that you can have when you own your identity, when you're operating on blockchain, is you can control what data you share and what you don't share. And you can choose to share your data with advertisers, but it's got to be worth your while. You may even be paid to participate in certain commercial activities. So the point is, however that comes to pass, the point is the consumer has much more control. They control their identity. They control the data that you put out in the world when you're moving around. And for newsrooms, you can control your content. And I just want to say one other thing about the technology getting easier every year. This email that we're going to send you tomorrow, where you're all going to be able to, you don't have to download anything. You're just going to navigate to a URL, and we're going to be giving you $5 to give away. And that is a super easy consumer experience. So it's an example of how this is getting easier and will get easier over time.
I was entrepreneur in residence for about a year at a place called Cable Labs, which is the research arm of the cable and broadband industry in Colorado. And as part of that, what they wanted me to do is bring new ideas to market out of the intellectual property that they had. So that involved, at one point, sitting in a secure, undisclosed location looking at patent applications, patents that were not yet public at all, and reading blockchain patents for about a week. And I thought, at the end of nonstop for a week, just reading these patents. And at the end of it, I thought, you know, I probably know more about blockchain in this moment than 99% of the people in the world, because it was such a new thing. I've forgotten most of it since then. But even at the end of that week, I think if you had asked me what it is that blockchain is, I was still a little squishy on it, because it has so many tentacles that extend in so many different directions. But the one thing that I was hopeful about was, you know what, here's another set of tools that's coming along. I don't know that it's there yet. I don't know that it's going to be a thing that's going to be helpful, but it is something that will be able to help us.
That's exactly
to solve
right.
problems.
I mean, you don't need to understand how blockchain works. I mean, I worked in television for 18 years, and I have no clue how the picture gets into the box in front of me where I watch the programs, or where the programs that I make end up on the television. I don't know how the internet works.
Right.
I ran nytimes.com. I don't have a clue how the internet works. I'm sorry. So you don't need to know. The point is, need to know how to understand how to harness the technology to achieve the ends we want to achieve, and in our case, it's journalism.
And the bad news is, and I'm gonna ask for questions here next, but the bad news is that there was, because of the Bitcoin thing, because of the whole crypto craze, there were some bad actors that just tried to make a quick buck.
Yeah.
And so it has been tainted by that. So it's a tool that, but the internet was a lot like that at the start too, right? I mean, there were a lot of people that were just trying to figure out how to scam. What are some problems we can solve? What are some questions that we have? I see one question way in the back. So yeah, let's just start right there with the microphone. It's hard for us to see you, so we will sing an aria for you here, though.
Aaron Pilhofer. Yeah, we'll repeat it. Aaron Pilhofer, ladies and gentlemen.
Here comes the mic.
So, there we go. So the initial launch, the ICO, didn't go great. A lot of the criticism at the time, this is a question for you, Vivian. A lot of criticism at the time was, blockchain is a big buzzword. Why are you guys building on top of Ethereum? What is the whole point of this? You could do this with a million other technologies. Can you talk about 5 or 6 tangible, maybe 2 or 3, how about that? Tangible things that launching as a blockchain startup allows the civil community to do that you could not do with another technology, or you would have to develop a technology that fundamentally, essentially, is Ethereum to do?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. If blockchain technology did not exist, we would have to build from scratch a very sophisticated, complicated new technology to manage a self-governing platform. It is the only technology out there that will allow self-governance to work. When we just, right now, like Civil's only been around for 3 months. When a newsroom joins the registry, that is what's called, they do that via something called a smart contract. When a member of the community challenges the newsroom, that also happens via blockchain technology. I'm not going to explain this from a technology point of view. First of all, there's no need to. Second of all, I'm not sure I could do it justice. But all of this kind of self-governance, you'd have to have, a castle full of, monkeys all doing all of these transactions if there was not a way to have blockchain technology where these kind of transactions and these kind of activities could be done in a trustless, decentralized way. In addition to that, and I won't go long, there are some other things that blockchain technology uniquely can contribute to journalism. I'll just name one, and then because I don't want to grandstand here. One is, with blockchain technology, any news organization, any person can archive their content permanently to the blockchain. What this means is it exists all over the place, all around the world. Right now, if you are on the internet, if you publish on the internet, your content lives on a server. A server can be shut down, a server can go down, I've heard horror stories from news organizations where they changed CMSs and they lost half of their content. I mean, there are a million things that can go wrong, But if you publish either the full text or the full content to the blockchain, or what's called a hash, which is basically just sort of the digital fingerprints of that content, it is retrievable forever. So those are just a couple of examples. I'm sure you have.
I,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's the same direction. It's primarily hope. Hope that a different model would be possible. And my point of reference is a column written by Nicolas Negroponte in the back of Wired around 1999. And I remember that he said, wouldn't it be great if with the internet we could single out an author that we really like to read, like from the New York Times, from the Guardian, whatever, or anybody else, not necessarily from a big brand media, and pay him or her a certain amount. The next Roger Ebert being paid via micropayments. Now, we all know that with the micropayments got into more trouble than that. But in our application for the current project, we wrote our use case with, can we create an economy of letters? And what I mean by that is, can we exchange media assets in a way that is different from today?
With no middleman. That's
And
the
whether
point. No
it's-
middleman.
And whether it's blockchain, I don't know.
It's fine. I'm not sure I'm totally there yet on this. I think embedded in the question is something I agree with, which I'm not sure that security-wise we're there on the identification parts, but I appreciate that Civil is trying. I do think the provenance thing is, that's a real issue, and that's something that has been not solved well, and I think blockchain is specifically suited well. So provenance, to be able to establish provenance and be able to have a real archive is really helpful. Next question. I have to look out and see. I think all the way over here. There you are.
Hi, Dimitris Malas from CNN Greece. This one goes for Mirko, just trying to understand a little bit the model that you're trying to create. You're using blockchain in order to have a fair payment for the content that you will be given by any content creator, right about that, more or less? The thing is how you're going to, you're talking about Africa, how you're going to, know that the person that is sending you the pictures, and he's going to be paid when the pictures are published or whatever, or you're going to use them over your smart contract, and there will be a procedure for that. How you're confident that he has the rights for that picture, how you're going to define that, because it's worldwide.
Thank you for the question, and I just noticed that we are now, the clock is flashing at us, so we're going to have to just have a short answer and then shuffle off the stage here.
I think from our perspective as media managers, media developers, the question is not such a problem as one would think, because these photographers I would be working with and signing contract with are not, they are professional colleagues. I can find their websites. It's not user-generated content in this case. Here I'm talking about 50 contracts written more quickly than before and exchanging photos with these 50 people where I can have kind of a social proof more than a technology proof that they have the rights to the content they are selling me. But this is only the first step. I'm trying to scale down the problem that I can use either blockchain or break it. If I break it on this level, I will not be using it, scaling it. So you're right about the problem, but in the first step, I would like to have the first transaction, then the first 50 photographers that I know, and then go on into larger numbers.
It's terrific, and it clearly is a problem that isn't solved because you have that problem now, and so if you have a new tool that will be able to work on that, that's terrific. Thank you very much for your participation, and we have another session coming up here, or we can go upstairs and see Olaf and Jenny upstairs. Thank you very much.
Scott, Vivian, Mirko, thank you so much. That was really interesting. And I think you guys are all hanging around for a drink, right? If people want to come and have a chat. Amazing. But